Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here, and I am joined by Rory O'Neill, Conor, McKeon and Derek McGrath, who are back on a fairly impressive league final performance by Waterford. How are we all doing, lads?
Very good, Mikey.
Good, Mikey.
Derek's probably a bit better than the rest of us, but I don't know. It's Monday morning, and I feel as exhilarated as David Clifford sounded during his acceptance speech yesterday in Croke Park. I was up there with one of the most tick-the-box speeches I've ever heard in my life.
You should just do you know what, though? I mean, I don't know how the two lads would feel about it, but I'd get rid of speeches. Now, I know that I'm saying that from a TV perspective because they're dreadful and I know you get the odd one, you get the Dalo one, but I really just think they're an antiquated, old-fashioned idea. They turn into a bunch of thank yous. Thank the kitman, thank the sponsors, thank this, thank that. So we know that you appreciate all of that. I just think they're a pile of shite and they should be just done away with. Hand them the cup and move on.
Very narky this morning, Rory.
I know, sorry, I'm in the cranky days.
And the national anthem and the parades.
Yeah. I get rid of the anthem as well. The anthem should only be played before finals. I think we've cheapened the anthem. Jesus, we'd play it before an under-12 rounders match, like at this stage. Do you know what I mean? Ridiculous carry on. But anyway, sorry. It's Rory's rants on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll have Ciaran Whelan along in a little while to look back on that impressive performance by Kerry in dismembering Mayo. But we'll start with Waterford puncturing the Cork balloon 2 weeks before the Munster Championship, Derek. There was a lot of optimism around Cork. It seems to dissipate. And you'd kind of wonder, Derek, at this stage, so kind of the broad question before the little stuff, but who actually got a lot from the hurling league this year? You could argue Cork did until the final game, and now they're probably questioning everything that went before. Kilkenny were probably quite happy as well, even losing the semi-final. But the team that beat them were so comprehensively beaten in the final, they'll be questioning everything. And Wexford were 100%, and they get absolutely flayed in the semi-final as well. So Limerick got something out of it because they didn't injure any players and everybody's well rested, and Waterford got something out of it because they got the cup and everybody else is probably at their head in their hands wondering what the hell's coming in 2 weeks.
And I think more than that, we got our fourth national title, you know, and I think that's a crucial thing on the back of, I think I said the last time, we certainly lost 4 finals when I was involved. There was 3 other finals lost. So psychologically, I think that little fillip of getting the trophy in the cabinet and having it almost out of the way. And look, Rory talked about speeches. I think if you look at Conor Prunty's speech and David Clifford's speech, I think both were caveated by there's a next step, a bigger step here. And that's where really the crux of the speeches were and the performance for Waterford. In terms of who got most of the league, Waterford undoubtedly did. As I said, a national trophy, confidence, still freshness to come back into the team in terms of Jamie Byrne, 70 minutes into Calum Lyons, 70 minutes into Conor Prunty. You know, we speculated all week down here that God, they won't risk Calum Lyons. They won't risk, they'll hold off for 2 weeks' time. So they've gotten game time into those. Relatively quite Déise Hutchison in the final. And the key thing to remember is, with all the discussions of how will it stand to you and how will it, serve you, the league, etc. The reality is, I think that we're actually going to get better. I think we're going to get better. And you're trying to be consciously not, people saying, they're getting giddy down in Waterford. I'm a realist here. People talk about marquee players around the country, and you talk about your Keane Lynches and you talk about your Kyle Hayes, etc. But I think we have 7 or 8 marquee players like Austin, Jamie Byrne,
they didn't even play, Derek.
And they didn't even play it. And that's my point. And look, I think I'm in a good position. I know Austin well. I can tell you now, he will be humming. He will be humming come Easter Sunday, like. And I texted a few of the boys. I was actually at a wedding on Saturday, and I texted a few of the boys after me. I've said this previously. I've had little or no contact with them over the years because you try and give fellas space. And every text that came back was step one complete. A bit robotic. Maybe you don't want to hear that, but that was the definite kind of tenure of their thought process, and it's very, very exciting. Like, and you know, you talk about Kerry, and I watched Pat Spillane highlighting Kerry's kind of defensive structure the last couple of weeks. Kerry scored 317 or 318 yesterday in football, and yet defensively they were in really great shape. So the counter-attacking system that Waterford have in play with the runners, Jack Prendergast, kind of Neil Montgomery, the unfashionable guys, I suppose, doing the work and then just breaking at unbelievable pace.
Conor, this Waterford style of play it's kind of frightening in a way, isn't it? Like that they knew how to beat Cork, which was runners off the shoulder and straight down the middle. They did it. They scored 4 goals. They could have scored 6 or 7. And the thing is with Liam Cahill is you imagine that this isn't the only game plan. This was the game plan for Cork. When they play Limerick in a few weeks, there's a very good chance that they will change that style of play. They seem to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, I think this might be in contrast to Cork yesterday, and I wouldn't sort of damn Cork on the basis of one display, but I think the big thing for Waterford is, you know, if a team sets up in a different way, they can adapt. You know, I mean, if there's going to be space in behind, if teams are going to clog the middle in such a way that they don't want Waterford to break through at all costs, well, then there's going to be space inside for Déise Hutchinson and Stephen Bennett. You know, the hurling pitch is only the same size, so it's up to you to position where you want to have your players. I suppose the point about Waterford is they have the players to hurt you from every position. Whereas I thought Cork yesterday, you know, like I think I was on this podcast after they beat Limerick and they looked so good. But Cork do look so good when the setup suits them. And I don't know whether is there a bit of a reluctance on management part to change things up in the game. But the things that work for them, like, you know, the number of times against Kilkenny in the semi-final where they allowed Kilkenny full back line to have short puckouts and have possession and keep it, and then set up this very sort of sturdy block through the middle of the team. They tried to do something similar to that against Waterford, and when it wasn't working yesterday, they didn't really have any. They didn't have any real response to it, but again, like I think all the credit has to go to Waterford here because they stopped Darragh Fitzgibbon, Carter Daly. Like, you know, I'm absolutely sure that Mikey Beavens and Liam Cahill are excellent management, but you won't get the same level of credit when 1 or 2 bona fide starters just come through onto your team every year. And like, you know, you were looking at Iarla Daly last year, you're looking at Carter Daly this year, fellas coming straight through and straight into the team and really, really key players. So I suppose the exciting thing, and you can gather it from just even talking to Derek this morning, but the exciting thing from a Water point of view is there's no indication yet where their ceiling is. Absolutely none whatsoever. Like, they're going to keep going. Like, and there's guys coming back. I don't mean coming back, but coming back into form. Like remember the 2016 under 21 win, and they scored 5 goals against Galway in the final. And that day, the 2 Bennetts and Patrick Curran were absolutely electric. And it has taken a year or two, particularly for Curran, and even DJ Foran as well. Those players now are all absolutely central to the thing, and everybody is pushing it on. So I suppose what you have is a very good setup, an ambitious panel that, as Derek said after the match, the reaction told you a lot about where their ambitions lie for the year. So they're very, very focused, and they're just very, very exciting to watch. You know, yeah. I mean, the guy that like the inside forwards didn't get the same level of ball that they were supposed to do, but still they kept going, and Déise popped up with a goal at the very end. I saw a piece that Chrissy O'Connor wrote for the Echo, a very good statistical analysis, and he reckons that Déise Hutchinson only touched the ball 4 times in the game. So there you go. That's where Cork focused on trying to keep Waterford players out of possession, and Waterford just hurt them everywhere else. So like I think it's very exciting for everybody, because Waterford are one of those teams, I think, where people kind of will them to do well. There's something, they have a bit of they have a great bit of sort of character about that team. And even the question about Gleeson as well, there was a couple of years ago where you'd be sitting here saying, well, is Gleeson a centre back? Is he, and that was kind of a big question that needed to be solved until you could say, well, Waterford were going to be for sure. But now the team is steady, it's settled, all the sort of building blocks are in place, and they can just throw Gleeson back in and wing forward the next day. And I would be absolutely certain that he tears into Tipperary in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. Rory, a little bit on Cork, who, like, the defensive issues that have been spelled out pretty well by the lads, that they were very apparent, but like the first thing Ciaran Kingston mentioned, really, I think, in his post-match interview, was the fact that they missed 17 chances. So, he had that figure to hand straight after the game, so it was that glaring that the stats man gave that one to him. We've sat here, saying nice things about the Cork forward line, but to miss 17 chances in a national final, your defense has to help you out, but the other, if you're not scoring at the other end anyway, what your defense does can be a little bit pointless.
Still put up not an unreasonable tally in the end. Certainly, in terms of points, obviously, I know Robbie O'Flynn scored a goal, kind of consolation stuff at the back end, and there was one half chance which Sean O'Brien made a fantastic save. But I don't think Cork created another goal scoring opportunity in the whole match, which is testament again to Waterford. The lads mentioned one word there, and both of the lads mentioned the same word quite a lot, exciting, in relation to Waterford. And I think that's the word. That is the word. I mean, they're so exciting to watch. Like, they're just racking up massive tallies, like, all across the team. They play a brilliant brand of hurling. They're just great to watch. I picked them start of the league. I said to Derek in a text last night, I think it's the first of 3 finals for them for the year. And I'd stand over that. I'd still think it'll take us some. Like, people are saying, everyone's worried about Limerick. Everyone's worried about Waterford. Yeah. Everyone will be worried about Waterford. Like, I can tell you now, John Kiley left Hurless on Saturday night saying, we have a right job on our hands here with this lot. And from a Cork perspective, I just think it's the same old failings. Again, they just haven't sorted out their defence properly. I do think on the 16th, 17th of April, there'll be a rejigging of that back six. I saw Owen Cadigan in the paper this morning saying that he would look to push Mark Coleman further up the field and possibly even into centre forward. I wouldn't probably go that radical, but I just don't think Mark Coleman is a six in the modern sense. You look at all the good sixes, the top sixes, right, which is Declan Hannon and Tadhg de Burka. They're deep lying. Mark Coleman is not that. They're ball playing centre-backs, fair enough. But Mark Coleman needs a looser role. He's just not going to lock down the middle of that defence. Going back to 2013, teams have been running right down the middle of the Cork defence, scoring goals easily. I mean, I saw John Gardner's tweet. It was very funny. I won't be able to sleep over the goals Cork conceded tonight. And I was kind of saying to myself, like, it is exactly the kind of player like him that you need. You just need somebody to go into those 3 and 6 central planks and just try and lock it down in a way that lads are going to think twice about running up that blind alley, because they'll know that they're going to be met with something other than, open the door and then you go. I think that's going to be an issue, and I do think a rejig is required. It'll probably mean that young lad having to go into the number 6 position earlier than he's expected. But the word is Kyle Hayes could end up playing 11. And I mean, what a baptism of fire for a 19-year-old to have to tackle Kyle Hayes in his first Munster Championship out at senior level. So look, I can understand the management's conundrum on that point of view. Joe Mellerick, in my view, shouldn't have been taken off when he was. I would have definitely persisted with him and maybe chucked him further back the field to try and tie things down, possibly put him on to Stephen Bennett. Look, I think all across the defence, I mean, Tim O'Mahony, people could actually make the argument, was he at fault for certainly 1, 2, maybe 3 of the goals? Like, is he a defensive-minded wing back again? I just think they're like, we spoke on the podcast in the preview, and I backed Waterford, and I stuck with it. And Dalo thought it was me playing silly buggers. And he was, and I said, look, the problems are going to be at the other end. Cork will rack up big enough scores to win matches. They just will concede too much at the other end. Yeah. And that's still the problem. On that,
the concession, just the scoring rates, Derek, of Waterford are astonishing, and particularly in terms of goals. I think it's 22 in the league. For a couple of years now, we've been saying, how'd you beat Limerick? How'd you beat, what will a team have to do? And the funny thing is that for a couple of years there, Limerick almost were playing this game out. Well, we'll score over 30 points and we won't be too worried about scoring goals. Now, they went away from that a little bit last year, at least statistically, it looked like they did. Waterford, Liam Cahill, it's a pretty logical approach, but could you, from a coaching point of view, it's easy for us to say, I'll score more goals, anybody can say that, but Waterford have quite clearly designed an attacking game plan here that Déise Hutchinson touches the ball 4 times, but one of those times he scores a goal, and that's kind of the strike rate they seem to be looking for everybody. And I'm just wondering, from you watching from the outside, how are they going about this? What's the key to this phenomenal goal scoring rate?
Well, a couple of things anyway. If you really analyse the last 2 All-Ireland or 2 performances against Limerick, if you go back to last year's semi-final, and if you go to the All-Ireland final, the December final, Waterford actually created some really good goal scoring chances in that. In actual fact, I was just writing a few notes on that on Friday. I was kind of saying there was at least 6 goal scoring chances in last year's semi-final. Even before Aaron Gillan got that kind of, we'd say, the goal just before the water break. And the year before, there was So there's huge athleticism first and foremost. We have the paciest team with Cork, I'd actually argue, in terms of from 8 to 15, and even from take Caleb Lyons as your attacking 5. And listen, lads, Cork Daly is the fastest player in Waterford. Like, people don't realise Cork Daly. If you watch,
he's still under 20. Is he still under 20?
He's still under 20. Yeah, he's still under 20. Yeah. And Cork, I know Cork's dad now, Niall Well. Great people, great family, like proper. Like, he was down at CBC, actually went to CBC, played Harte down at CBC. If you really watched him over the years, he did not give Cathal O'Neill a sniff. When Waterford played Limerick in the minor round robin in 2019 in Welsh Park, the day that Waterford got the awful tanking off Limerick, he did not give Cathal O'Neill a sniff of the ball that day. Actually, Cathal O'Neill got a point from play. But if people were really watching him, you're kind of saying to yourself, this fella can do it all. And I was actually on local radio here on Friday. I said, I wonder will he tag Darragh Fitzgibbon? And he made, not only did he make it a nightmare for Darragh Fitzgibbon, but he got forward himself. I think he won 3-4 frees in a row at one stage. And all he needs to do, a little bit more finesse on the offload. And if you really watch him, he'll be after creating goals or chances. So what they have is their power when they win the ball, to break tackle, off the shoulder. But it's the depth that Montgomery will go to, the depth that Jack Prendergast will go to, the depth that those willing runners will go to, and then just a little offload. And it's interesting, provide some context. When we won the league in 15, Patrick Curran and Shane Bennett were doing their leaving cert. And I remember kind of saying, Shane Bennett had played in the league for us. It was actually our star in the league in some games. Right? And we tried our best to get him to play the league final, but it was obviously just before the leaving cert. So he actually left the panel, and Patrick and himself came on in the 15 semi-final against the Munster champs. So the point I make, I suppose, is I've made this argument that now you have players coming to their actual peak of their physical, mental, tactical awareness. They're just so aware of what's going on, and they smell blood. Years ago, I would look at the tip attack of Bubbles, Callanan, even Lark Corbett, Owen Kelly, and they would be zipping it around looking for that extra pass for the goals. If you watch the Waterford College's All-Ireland winning team that Darragh Lyons was part of, that Patrick Curran was a part of, that Tyg de Burke was a part of, that Colin Dunford, that's now the hub of the team, as opposed to, I suppose, when we were there in 17, our biggest influence was Morn and Brick and Tyg still and Jamie. The change, it's kind of almost like a geographical change in terms of the Western influence within the team. Ballygunner dominated Waterford here, yet they may only end up with one player on the Waterford team, which is no bad thing in terms of balance as well. So I think, they're really just, they're attacking. And look, when you play with that type of confidence, it's you can see the confidence is dripping from them, and that unity is obviously there. And again, fast forward that to Cal's under 20 tip team, against Wexford and All-Ireland semi-final. I think they got 7 or 8 goals, and they train at 100 miles an hour, lads. 100 miles an hour. They bring chaos. They bring frantic kind of, and I hear this talk of we're contenders. I got a lot of texts last night from up the country. You're definitely contenders. Contenders. We're the team. We're the team to beat. We are the team to beat now. Yeah. Simple as. Yeah. And I don't care who's waiting in the long grass. I heard someone said to me yesterday, Tipper waiting in the long grass to have their eyes on you. They can all wait in the long grass because it's whoever beats Waterford, they will be going up the steps. I tell you that.
I think that's bamboo that Tipperary are hiding in rather than long grass at this stage. Conor, that was actually, I was just leading on to this. We'll finish up with hurling now in a minute. I asked at the start who got anything from the league. So I suppose the spin-off question is, like, are Waterford All-Ireland favourites at this stage after that league? Like, you can win a league and people kind of shrug their shoulders and say it was just the league, or you can win the league like Waterford just won the league and everyone like puffs out their cheeks and says, I wonder, was Limerick kind of, bunking off the league the right approach? Can they possibly come into the championship with the same level of intensity as Waterford? And even if they do, have Waterford now just kind of hit some kind of a peak?
Well, I'd far prefer to be in the position that Waterford are in now than Limerick are. Like, regardless of how much of sort of Limerick's inertia was self-inflicted or orchestrated by management because they didn't see any value in winning games early on in the league. There's no doubt about it that the Waterford dressing room, their training session on Tuesday, whenever the next game they gather, there's going to be more energy in that room than there's going to be in any other room. And just on the sort of comparisons between the two, maybe to go back to the management of Waterford for a second. Waterford had 2 brilliant years the last couple of years, but like everybody else in hurling, they were eclipsed by how brilliant Limerick were. And that's like, if you go back to the last year's All-Ireland semi-final, First 25 minutes, they threw everything at Limerick, everything. And I sort of wondered after that game, like a lot of people, like what do you do in that situation? Like Waterford were humming along nicely, you know, from the game against Laois when they were almost beaten. They went vertical in terms of their form. And in that semi-final, they went and they hit Limerick as hard as they could with everything they had. And they ended up being destroyed. And I remember sitting there saying afterwards, like you do in the very knee-jerk snap reactions, like, where did they go from this? Like, you know, they're so far off Limerick. Like, how quickly can you turn that around? Well, the answer is, you know, 6 months or 7 months or whatever it has been, because they just have, and that was the starting point. You know, there was no, okay, lads, we have to go back to base and start again.
No
and
panic.
You know, that was ground zero, you know, and start to build it again. And they played like a team this year that have no hang-ups, but Limerick, anybody else in the team. And they're starting with a home game against a team in Tipperary who, for all their talent, haven't been going well. And if they win that game, which I think most people will expect them to do, like, I have to be honest, at halftime on Saturday, I was having a sneaky look at the odds for this year's All-Ireland, because when you have a team that are as short odds favourites as Limerick are, everybody else is great value, and I think Waterford is superb value. But again,
they were better value at 12 to 1, Conor, at the start of the year.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Says a man who I think may have put a quid or two on there. Well, look, I think
I said a few weeks ago, and I don't think people are making. They're on a mission, like, you know, when you're on a mission, like, you know, it sounds a bit intangible. You can't read, but there's madness in their eyes, like, you know, if that makes sense, like, there's madness in their eyes, like. And I remember in 15 we won the league, and when we played Kilkenny in All-Ireland semi-final, it was bonus territory. 16 we drew with Kilkenny, and we lost the replay. At 17 then, so I don't think, you know, this physical gap Limerick. If you go physical with them, I'm telling you, that Saturday night game down in the first game, that Saturday night game down in Limerick as well, the second round of the championship, it won't be the only time they'll meet this year. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, probably not. And look, it's very exciting. I think anybody who's a hurling fan is, you know, delighted that there's a team coming along who we actually think, you know, could be the equals or better of Limerick. And that's not a slight to Limerick, that's a celebration of Limerick. Say you want the team to bring the best out of them. Derek, thank you very much, and I have a feeling we'll be talking to you a few more times this summer anyway, and we'll be back in a second with Ciaran and Whelan to talk about the football.
He hits it, it's over the bar! Oh, holy Moses!
Welcome back. We've been joined by Ciaran and Whelan to look back on the Allianz League weekend in football finals. How you doing, Whelan?
Morning, lads. All good. Not about it.
We're hoping you can match Derek McGrath's Monday morning enthusiasm. Such was his enthusiasm for Waterford hurling that we actually forgot to talk about the Division 2A final. Westmeath and Down fans, I apologise, and we'll get back to you again. But
He's
Derek,
Mikey, Kerry win the league at a canter, and you want me to be all enthusiastic about it? Yeah.
we got two dubs on special. Tell us how great Kerry are.
They're coming for us. They're coming for us.
They are.
Listen, like, to their credit, I think we said it in the very first podcast of the year that they'd win the league at a canter, and they did. I thought their performance yesterday, albeit Mayo were probably flat, missing a couple of guys. I thought the Kerry performance was absolutely top drawer. You can see that ambition is there since the start of the year to get a good defensive structure in place. They have the talent, and they can play good counter-attacking football. They can move the ball very quickly. They have excellent forwards. And I think if you look back, just reflecting on it, this is in no way building them up. I think this is a reality. They're beginning to look like what Dublin were really in their pomp. And you look at even their improvements defensively. Jason Foley was excellent yesterday. Tyg Morley is dropping back to play, you know, sweep and roll, and he's playing it very effective. Albeit, you know, Aidan O'Shea dropping off him allowed Kerry to do that. They have brilliant strike runners. Gavin White was just unbelievable. Tom O'Sullivan, Brina Breglick. They're still developing in midfield. They have a playmaker in Paddy Clifford who can run it, who can kick it, who can spray passes around. They've workhorses, Moynihan and Spillane. And they've Geaney and Clifford. Geaney on top, playing on top of his game again. And they didn't even have Shawnee O'Shea. So when they play at that level, and if you go, I think what really is evident, you know, any team that goes man to man and tries to press up on Kerry and play true football against them are really going to struggle. And you're probably going to see, again, similar to Dubs, you're going to see more teams playing a tighter defensive system to try and frustrate them and close them down and keep in the game. I think that's the only way you're going to play this team, because they're still on an upward curve and they're getting better and better.
Yeah, Conor, that was very evident in, as we were discussing before we came on air, the almost willful abandonment of Pádraig O'Hora by his teammates. He was left to deal with David Clifford on his own, and better men than Pádraig O'Hora have floundered on the rocks of trying to look after David Clifford one-on-one.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, the thing about it is, I'm not sure that there's a right way to mark David Clifford, but there's definitely a wrong way, and I think Mayo figured that one out, if nothing else, yesterday. I wonder, like, Oisín Mullen marked him in the league game a couple of weeks ago, and I wonder whether that changed when Mullen was pulled from the team, and O'Hora was kind of the, you know, last man back, you take him sort of thing. But, you know, they left him cruelly exposed, because in a lot of cases he didn't do anything particularly wrong. Like, he showed Clifford the outside. He kept his body position pretty strong. You know, he kept his feet planted, but like, you're dealing with a guy who has a different range of talents. Like, you don't have a David Clifford to mark and train and to get used to marking David Clifford. There's a couple of things that just stood out yesterday. And I was actually at the game in Killarney the previous week against Tyrone, where he actually struggled in some ways because Pádraig Clifford wasn't on the pitch and Sean O'Shea wasn't on the pitch, and they couldn't really get him into the game quite as much. Now, he still kicked 3 from play in that game, but you can see the difference there between, you know, having those players on the pitch for Clifford and not. You know, they know how to get him the ball. But the first thing that just stands out a mile is the way he strikes the ball. It's incredible. The first point that he kicked, we had no idea whether the ball had gone 40 yards wide or directly over the black spot, because he kicks the ball so high, and he kicks it from a kind of standing position. He doesn't have any great backlift or anything like that. So he doesn't signpost the fact that he's about to take a shot. So I don't know how, and he can kick like that on the run without actually breaking stride. But the thing that really stands out is his ball control. Like, and you could see it for the goal. O'Hora showed him the outside. He did absolutely everything right. There wasn't enough room really for Clifford to go past him on the outside, but he does this little solo from his right hand onto his left foot, back to his right hand. And it actually just changes the direction of his run ever so slightly. And it takes him so few paces to actually go around the player like he's not there. And then the finish was absolutely sensational. So, yeah, when you have a team like that that's playing football as defensive as Kerry are, because you have to say that they are, you know, after they scored their first goal yesterday, I looked down and every Kerry player, including Clifford and Geaney, were inside the 65. So they know how to get back now. They know how to, you know, make up for maybe the lack of man-to-man markers in that situation. And Mayo, you have to say, played directly into their hands. Like, Mayo need a broken game where their runners can kind of get on the ball. And trying to unpick a lock is not their forte at all. And the number of scores that came in the second half, with Mayo moves breaking down, Kerry moving the ball quickly, and then being 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 up front, it was absolutely criminal. So yeah, there's a couple of things at play there. One of them was definitely Mayo, but Clifford was off the charts.
He was. Rory, there was a nice piece of the Sunday Independent. I think it was Dermot Crowe wrote it, just about kind of the Paddy Tally influence, and like, and the crux of it was they kind of needed a Tyrone man to come down and teach them the importance of humility and the importance of, you know, how defending is a team responsibility and everybody has to do it. And whether it's all Paddy Tally or whether it's Jack O'Connor, a combination of the entire coaching team, that's what they have now. And as Conor says, they're racking up phenomenal scores, 319. We're talking about David Clifford, like he's the next Messiah, which he probably is. But at the same time, it's all built on this very solid structure that they now have, which involves David Clifford, their marquee forward, traipsing back 70 yards when that's what the team needs. It is a sea change.
But I don't know. Sometimes, like, backroom people, when things are going well, tend to get like maybe more credit than they deserve, and then maybe more abuse when things are going badly. I'm not so sure. I think there's just a sort of a maturity in Kerry now. I think Jason Foley is probably playing the best football I've seen him play for an awful long time. It took him a while to figure out fullback. I don't know if he's a natural fullback, or certainly didn't start out that way, and probably the best fullback now going really across the country.
Probably from marking David Clifford in training.
Yeah, like, he gets lots of practice every night. Like, and that's a very fair point. I mean, it's a good point that Conor makes, you know, like, I mean, that would absolutely sharpen you up, I'm sure, because the reality is, from Jason Foley's point of view, and when he goes into a match situation, he's probably not playing. He's not going to be marking someone at that same level. And Tadhg Morley seems to have figured it out. And they're just sitting that little bit deeper. I mean, I don't necessarily think it was any sort of ingenious plan. Just think across the board, look, there's just a proper maturity in their play. I still think there's one or two issues. And look, heaven forbid anything were to happen, Clifford. But Christ, if he did get injured, like, you are talking a game changer. He's that important and he's that good. But yeah, like, I think all the pieces are kind of in place for them. We kind of knew at the start they would go for the league, because obviously they don't face a really stiff test now until probably into late June. And when they head towards the quarterfinals, unless that tough match in the Munster semi-final gets played in Parky Ring, that's another day's story. But yeah, so we kind of knew this from the very, very start. I think the worrying aspect, though, from yesterday's point of view, was for Mayo to get a bit of a pace in, like 15 points is a right beating now. I mean, having said that, like, you looked at their half back line yesterday, and the Hessian, Rory Brickenden and Michael Plunkett. Is that going to be their, like, what do Mayo launch most of their good play from? It's usually their half back line. It's usually the Oisin Mullins, Paddy Durkins, Owen McLaughlin's. None of them played yesterday. And I just kind of got a sense, like, how fussed was Horan about it. You kind of felt like they fell into a league final. Yeah, and they were kind of, let's have a go. I thought it was a nice game. Like most of the football this weekend, I felt it was nice. There was a nice old feel to it. Like, it was nice. That's what I'd describe it as. But was there a championship feel to yesterday? No, absolutely not. And there certainly wasn't in the first game either, between Galway and Roscommon. So I think Kerry will know, look, yeah, grand. We saw it even in the speech afterwards. Yeah, like, happy out, grand. They'll park it and they'll just move on.
I don't think he went as far as to say he was happy out at any point during that speech.
Yeah, the key is to not look happy when you're title.
There always is, I feel, football league weekend, final weekend, there is always kind of a touch of the kind of pitch opening kind of level of intensity to it. Like, they rarely do go hammer and tongs. And Jack O'Connor said it afterwards. He said, "I'm fairly sure Mayo had one eye on Galway." Now, that's him downplaying any achievement, of course, but it's also patently true, isn't it, that James Horan's interested in that match more than this match?
Yeah, I think it's only natural the eyes are somewhere else, particularly with the championship so compact now. In a couple of weeks there isn't that downtime, and you don't know, certainly over the last few weeks in terms of training and conditioning, teams would have had to put in blocks of training at different periods and stuff like that. Yeah, and we're not privy to that in the background, but the strength and conditioning guys are trying to get them to peak for championship, depending on when that is, and an easier run. Mayo, of course, have their eye on Galway, but I still think they'd be very disappointed with performance, and I still think it's like, okay, you can wrap it up that, okay, it's not that important, and maybe Mullen and Durkin back in defence will help them. Dermot O'Connor, Rob Henley wasn't playing, but even up front, you get a sense that they're still a little bit disjointed and dysfunctional. And the one thing that probably stood out for me yesterday was probably their lack of pace in certain areas. Ruan and Jordan Flynn have done well in the middle of the park, but like Stephen Cohn was exposed at times, Shea was exposed at times, even Shane Ryan came back. I know Cillian O'Connor's only coming back, but he bombed up the pitch, opened up the legs at one point. And there was little signs there that some of maybe their more experienced players back in Croke Park, back on a fast surface, got badly exposed yesterday. And that's what Horan has brought through all these new players, but many of them are really putting their hand up to say, yeah, I'm going to make a significant difference here. And are Mayo still reliant on some of their experienced lads to get them where they be? So while they will be better, and they would be much better come Connacht Championship, and they'll have a lot of their players back, and they'll definitely be a more better set up, I would think, defensively. Some of the same old failings were there yesterday, and I don't care what you say, lad, coming out of Croke Park with 15-point defeat to get on a bus to go back down the road, it's not a place where any team wants to be, and certainly it will have a bit of a negative impact getting them back up over the next couple of weeks to get ready for Galway.
Yeah, would you agree, Conor? There's always the aspect of a big match in Croke Park is better than a week's training, etc., etc. But if it goes as badly wrong as it did for Mayo here, the ramifications for your lead into your match against your biggest local rivals, it can be only negative.
Yeah, because going into the game, it had the feeling of one of those matches where there wasn't actually a whole lot to win for either side, but there was plenty to lose. And I think Mayo kind of took as much negative out of the game as you possibly can. All those absences are absolutely valid, mitigation. Diarmuid O'Connor was exceptional in the games that I saw him in the league. He almost looked like he was becoming their John O'Shea, their Kieran Kilkenny, the player that all the play goes through. And I think Henley has really, bear in mind that Rory Bourne yesterday made a couple of brilliant saves from Paddy Clifford in the first half. But Henley is a huge presence for them, and as Rory said, that half back line, that's where all their energy comes from. That's when they were chasing down games against Monaghan and Clonus earlier on in the league when they were beating Dublin. That's where a lot of their energy comes from. But like they were still in the situation that they found themselves in yesterday, and I'm like absolutely certain that performance didn't reflect their best work. So it's up to them how quickly they kind of deal with that and move on. But the other side of that was that Galway were no shakes yesterday, great shakes from Croke Park yesterday either. So, if we're using the performance in the league final stick to beat Mayo, I think you have to give Galway a bit of a crack of it too. So that game is what both of those teams, their entire seasons were going to hinge on, and I don't think that has been affected in a huge way by yesterday.
Yeah, or a nice way to lead on to it then, because it was probably the best game of the weekend. Of all the pitch openings, it was the most entertaining pitch opening, and Roscommon won it like in fairly spectacular fashion. I'd say it was a shootout, and the problem for Galway fans is they're probably wondering, do all our matches have to be shootouts?
Well, it turned into a shootout because Paul Conroy gave an absolute exhibition, certainly in the first half anyway. Ridiculous. And then you had Donny Smith maybe chipping in the second half. Again, it was of the 4 games over the course of the weekend, it was definitely the game that felt, it was competitive. The quality was reasonably high. But I still thought the pace was just that little bit off and that little bit slower. And I was actually sitting next to Colin Cooper, and I said, when we were watching, I said, Jesus, Mayo, won't be too worried looking at that Galway performance, Colin. And then halfway through the next match, he turned around to me and he said, Galway won't be too worried looking at that Mayo performance. So
Rory, do you know what it felt like? I was watching it yesterday, and it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was it was great to watch,
and there was the quality of score taken was excellent. But it was like watching a minor game before the senior game. That it was just so open, and it was you go down, take your score, we'll go take our score. You know what I mean? It was great. It was entertaining, but I definitely think there was a bit of bite missing out of it.
And you had no Roscommon. You had no Roscommon player sent off. I mean, when does that happen? Sorry, Roscommon, I'm only joking.
They don't think you're joking, Roy.
They'll be coming for me. They'll be coming.
But there's a lot to be said for having good forwards as well, and it's the one thing that Roscommon as a Division 2 team, like they have some array of talented guys, and great variety as well. The goal, I'm sure Porrick Joyce will have nightmares over it, because where Dermot wanted to pick up the ball, he actually he kind of sashayed his way through 3 fellas after running along the kind of arc of the D without anybody laying hands. It might even have been Shane Walsh who missed the original tackle, and that's just not the sort of thing you're not going to concede that goal in the championship. You're going to concede a free. You're going to try and take the fella's head off before he gets that far. So I'd say they'll brush it off fairly quickly. But I think Roscommon were probably the team that had more to win there yesterday. And
they have an unbelievable record. Was it Eamon Donoghue? And I went back looking at this myself before he tweeted out. Is that like their 5th Division 2 title in the last 7 or 8 years?
I think there
must be a few of them with a great collection of Division 2 medals.
They've had something like 10 relegations or promotions in the last 11 years. So
it's amazing.
They're Fulham and West Brom rolled into one. It's quite phenomenal.
The only question mark Mikey would have around Galway is, have Galway improved? You still question marks. I know they've been operating in Division 2, but are they still going to be going to the championship relying on Paul Conroy, Shane Walsh and Damien Comer? Or are some of the others going to be able to really step up and take some of that responsibility? Like, even you look at Paul Conroy's performance yesterday, top class, and his ability to kick points off both feet, I have to say, just out of this world. But similar when they played Mayo last year in the Connacht final, he was brilliant in the first half, but Mayo snuffed him out in the second half. So is there anything? Yes, there's definitely a little bit more emphasis on trying to get a +1, a +2 back from Galway when they can. But I'm just looking coldly at Galway. Are they any better than they were last year? We'll find out in a few weeks, you know what I mean? Because I don't think we can overread too much into yesterday, but you just be concerned that they're still reliant on the big three to try and drag them along, you know?
As big threes go to be reliant on, as long as they're all fit, it is a pretty good three to be reliant on, but I take your point. Just briefly then, Conor, Mickey Harte does it again, some more silverware. It's kind of phenomenal, really. And especially when you consider the start they started with a loss and a draw, so to end up as the Division 3 league champions. I don't think what did they go, 7 straight wins, was it? It must have been.
Yeah, well, look, I sort of long had a theory about, when people were crying under the football in the Leinster Championship, and like rightly so over the last while, you were looking at a lot of counties of Louth's profile and saying, well, actually, like where is there, like, our teams getting the most out of themselves, our county boards giving themselves the best possible chance by creating an environment for a team to out or to get closer to the potential. Because in an awful lot of those counties, I think the knee jerk is, appoint a new manager, get him in, see what he can do. And it's only ever, a very small lift. You tend to get a little bounce at the very best. But to put in something sustainable and to chart proper progress, I think you need something much, much bigger than simply changing the manager. But if the manager is Mickey Harte, I think it's a great experiment as to what's capable. Because a couple of years ago, you had to check Louth football for a pulse. Like, there was no way that anybody could have envisaged this. The promotion from Division 4 to Division 3 is probably a promotion that most Division 4 teams can make if they got their house in order, got everybody out, got properly prepared for a year. But to go immediately then into Division 2, particularly what was at stake this year, is a huge, huge achievement. And I think it just kind of goes to show you maybe that there is huge potential in every county, and Louth were no exception. It took some, like, I read a great piece in the Argus, the local newspaper, last week, where they described one of the goals that Louth scored in Wicklow the previous week in Ockram. And it was in the second half and they were well ahead. And Mickey Harte stood out in the line and he shouted Darver. And Darver's obviously the place where the centre of excellence is in Louth. And with that, the whole team moved into a different formation and they ran a play from the kick out that was very much like the Michael Murphy, Brian McHugh move, where they bat it down and they got a goal directly off it. So, like, that's the standard to which Louth have gotten in 2 years. Like, that management are actually calling plays from the sideline and that they're so well drilled that they can execute it like that. So I think when you have somebody who's as good at playing with people's abilities as Mickey Harte and a coach as good as Gavin Devlin, there you go. Like, there's the evidence of how far a team can come in a short period of time.
I think, Mikey, it was very much a Tyrone light performance, if you know what I mean.
That was exactly what I thought as well.
Yeah, you can just see the handprints of the Tyrone setup. Like, Louth, they gave up the kick out. They actually gave up the kick out, so Limerick had, I think, 100% of their kick out. So they actually gave them the possession and they forced Limerick to work it through the lines and had to carry it, and they closed down the space. And even if Limerick were to go long, they'd already dropped off, so they'd be overloading in the middle of the park. So they totally dictated the terms of the game. And the minute, obviously, that when that kick out, they had someone in the Colin Kavanagh role dropping back in front of the full back line. There was lots of handprints of the work that he's done with Tyrone, and particularly, in terms of their levels of fitness in the last 15-20 minutes, their counter attack and play was excellent. And I think Limerick ran out of petrol a bit, and definitely Louth finished the game stronger. But you could see there was a real good structure to their play, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Ciaran Byrne was excellent, the full forward. Tommy Jordan was brilliant in midfield, and definitely a team that's playing with a bit of confidence and belief in the manager. So you have to give them credit for what they've done there.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Well, actually, we'll leave it at that after 1 second. In a word to each of you, who's going to win the All-Ireland?
I carry all the way. I said it that they would be beaten all year, and that went out the window. Obviously, in the last round of the league, in a game that obviously they didn't really care too much about. But I don't see anybody beating Kerry really from here.
Whelo?
I can't disagree. I think Kerry are the team that are, we won't read too much into yesterday, but just as I said, the structure they have in terms of their defence, their counter-attack play, their talent, the Clifford factor, I just think they're definitely the team to beat.
Conor?
Yeah, like all the evidence just says Kerry. Like you'd want to have some, hunch about another team, of something that they haven't shown yet to tip anybody other than Kerry. And I don't think there's enough available evidence to kind of go any other direction, because if they don't at this stage, you won't say that it's a choke. But given the route that they have to the final, particularly if that game is in Killarney against Cork, it's very much set up for them at this stage.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll get your Chalchin Cup predictions next week. That's it for today. We'll be back later in the week. Thank you to Whelo, thank you to Conor, thank you to Rory, and thank you to Derek McGrath earlier, and we'll chat to you later.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.